Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So this is where we take, a whole stack of articles, research, notes, and we basically boil it all down.
Yeah, we pull out the most important bits, the surprising stuff, just for you.
Right. The idea is to give you a real shortcut so you're properly informed, but hopefully not feeling buried under it all.
Exactly. Cut through the noise, get you a clear picture, but keep it digestible.
So for this deep dive, we're looking at July 7th, 2025. We've picked out the 15 biggest stories, global and U.S.
We've got stuff from major news outlets, specific reports, even some historical context pulled in.
It's a single day, but wow, these events.
Mm.
They're literally reshaping landscapes, policies, how we think about things. Like the Texas floods, the scale is just immense.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this. We should probably start with nature, because some really catastrophic events were dominating the headlines.
Yeah, that's unavoidable. The historic Central Texas floods were, while they were huge, the sources make that clear.
Huge doesn't even cover it. Deadliest flash floods in Texas in a century. Over 100 lives lost.
It's staggering. The reports mention massive rainfall, right, from the remnants of Tropical Storm Barry.
Yeah, triggering catastrophic flash floods. Kirk County got hit particularly hard.
And the Guadalupe River surging tens of feet in minutes.
Can you imagine having early July 4th, the National Weather Service actually issued 6 simultaneous flood emergencies? That tells you something.
The speed is terrifying, and the human cost. You said over 100 lives, at least 104, I think, 84 in Kirk County alone.
Yeah, and the stories. Scores of summer campers, particularly from Camp Mystic, just swept away, many still missing.
Awful. We read about some harrowing escapes, too, like a woman evacuated with her dogs. Puts a face on the statistics, doesn't it?
It really does. And beyond the immediate tragedy, this kicked off a big national conversation.
Right. About readiness. There was criticism leveled at NOAA about their forecasting for such an extreme event.
People started asking about funding, linking it maybe to past staffing cuts, questioning if the warnings were effective enough.
Exactly. And that connects to the public reaction, too. Reports of outrage over delayed rescue efforts, calls for real investment now.
In flood mitigation, better alert systems.
Precisely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, you see climate change mentioned, even by critics, as intensifying these kinds of events. It's a stark example of how our infrastructure, our warning systems, they need to keep pace.
It really drives home the need for proactive preparedness, doesn't it? Not just reacting after the fact.
Absolutely. The cost of waiting is just too high.
And Texas wasn't the only place, right? Globally, there was other major environmental stuff happening.
That's right. Indonesia's Mount Ruang volcano had an explosive eruption.
Yeah.
Ash clouds way up high.
Forced evacuations messed with air travel.
Thousands evacuated, yeah. And then up in Canada, Manitoba wildfire.
Leaf Rapids evacuated.
Yeah, because of forecasted winds threatening to spread nearby fires. And again, it sparks that same conversation. Wildfire prevention, climate adaptation investment.
Because these events, they're expected to become more common, more intense.
Unfortunately, yes.
So what this all tells us, really, is, well, it paints a pretty clear picture. The world's getting more vulnerable to these disasters. And it underscores just how urgent the need is for better preparation, smarter warnings, resilient infrastructure.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so from the power of nature, let's pivot. Let's look at the human side of things, the geopolitical chessboard, diplomacy, conflict, trade wars.
Right, and here things get really complex.
A big one was Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu visiting the White House, his 3rd visit under President Trump.
And this was happening, interestingly, right as a U.S.-brokered Israeli-Hamas ceasefire proposal was supposedly agreed upon in Doha.
Yeah, and there's that whole layer with the ICC indictments from the previous Biden administration. Remember those?
Yeah.
Against Israeli officials.
Right, which the U.S. doesn't recognize jurisdiction over itself anyway, but it adds complexity.
Definitely. So what was Israel looking for in this visit?
Primarily, continued U.S. security assurances. That was the main focus, according to the sources, especially regarding Gaza reconstruction and also Iran's nuclear program.
And President Trump, what was his angle?
He was emphasizing a good chance for ceasefire agreements, putting a positive spin on it.
Well, not everyone saw it that way. There was criticism.
Oh, definitely. NGOs, Palestinian supporters, they were highly critical, pointing to ongoing violence, Israeli bombing in Gaza, and also in Yemen against Houthi targets.
So a real split in reactions. Supporters seeing it as vital for stability, maybe getting hostages back.
While detractors felt it overlooked civilian suffering, potential war crimes.
It really highlights the difficulty, doesn't it? achieving peace in that region.
Immense difficulty. The sources show this delicate power balance, the sheer complexity of negotiations, the huge humanitarian stakes.
And you see global calls for diplomacy intensifying, aid groups warning the window for relief is closing.
Right. It shows how fast political narratives shift while the reality on the ground, that remains grim. It is worth noting, though, renewed peace talks did apparently start in Cairo on that same day, July 7th.
So a glimmer of diplomatic effort, maybe?
A fragile one, perhaps.
Okay, shifting over to Ukraine, another major flashpoint. Escalation seemed to be the word.
Yeah, President Zelensky was calling for a coalition of the willing. He wanted faster diplomatic and military support.
This was after talking with the UK's new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, right?
Correct. And this call came amid increasing Russian aerial attacks.
And Ukraine was hitting back too. There was a drone attack.
Yes, on a Russian chemical plant. Reports linked it to manufacturing those Shahed drones.
The Iranian ones. Meanwhile, Russia claimed gains.
They claimed significant advances in the Dnipropetrovsk region, strategically important area. So Zelensky is pushing hard for more air defense and, crucially, more domestic drone production with Allied help.
And how are allies responding? Europe seems varied.
It is. Poland, for instance, brought back border controls, citing migration issues. Ursula von der Leyen in the EU was facing heat over old vaccine procurement stuff, adding political noise.
And opinions are split in the US and EU too, right? Hawks versus skeptics.
Exactly. Push for more military aid versus fears of escalation. NATO's apparently looking at Ukraine's ideas about interceptor drones.
And then Russia launched, what, its biggest drone strike of the war?
Reportedly, yes, on July 7th. Widespread destruction, casualties, just awful.
Plus, that news about Russia's transport minister found dead. And apparent suicide.
Yeah, that just adds another layer of instability and intrigue to the whole situation.
It's relentless, isn't it? Military action, diplomatic calls, strategic counters, like a constant push and pull.
A very dynamic and dangerous chessboard, absolutely. Every move sends ripples.
And speaking of ripples, the economy. Trade tensions flaring up again.
President Trump announced new tariffs, 25% on imports from Japan and South Korea.
Effective August 1st, unless they renegotiate.
That's the timeline. It followed a 90-day truce expiring.
But wasn't there a bigger round of tariffs potentially coming?
There was, up to 40% on goods from 14 countries. That got postponed to August 1st, too, after some intense lobbying.
And the EU is prepping retaliation.
Oh, yeah. Reports say they're targeting American beef, auto parts, beer, Boeing planes, the usual suspects in these disputes.
Classic tit for tat.
Exactly. And economists are worried. Warnings about a potential global trade war.
Which could mean disrupted supply chains, slower growth, inflation.
All of the above. It really shows you how interconnected everything is. Diplomacy, military actions, trade. One move impacts everything else, down to the stuff you buy.
It really does. Okay, let's bring the focus back home now. To the U.S., some major shifts happening in domestic policy and politics.
A really big one was President Trump signing that huge tax and spending package into law. Multi-trillion dollars.
What's in it? Tax breaks, mostly for high earners.
That's a major component, yes, but paired with deep spending cuts. Medicare, Medicaid.
How deep are we talking for Medicaid?
The sources say slashing it by about $1 trillion over 10 years, which could mean, 17 million Americans potentially losing coverage?
Wow. 17 million. And this package also built on earlier approved funding for things like accelerated deportations, family separations.
Correct. Those provisions were already contentious, so predictably, public reaction was sharply split.
Progressive groups calling it gutting the safety net.
While conservatives praised it for fiscal restraint, maybe stimulating the economy.
But economists seem wary. Concerns about the debt.
Definitely. Warnings that the tax cuts alone could add something like $3.3 trillion to the federal debt. And investors, they seem nervous, racing for turbulence.
So no clear consensus on the long-term impact, despite the political framing.
Not at all. It really highlights those different lenses on economic policy.
Then, completely shifting gears, you got Elon Musk.
Right. Launching a new political party. The America Party.
A direct challenge to the Republicans. How did Trump react?
Not well. Sharp backlash. Scoffed at it, even threatened Musk with deportation, apparently.
And the market reacted. Tesla stock
plunged. Dropped 7%. Lost nearly $15 billion in market cap almost immediately.
So what's Musk's rationale? What's his stated reason?
His contention, according to reports, is that both major parties have failed, pointing to rising debt, especially after that tax bill, and what he sees as a lack of environmental leadership.
And Trump just dismissed him. Mocked his motives.
Pretty much, yeah. And their back and forth on social media blew up, became its own story.
What are the potential ripple effects here? Politically.
Analysts are talking about a split vote risk. Could impact the 2026 midterms. Some moderate Republicans, independents, might be intrigued.
But others worry about fragmenting the vote further.
Exactly. And the debate is on. Is this visionary or just ego? It raises big questions about political parties versus personality-driven politics.
Okay, now on to immigration. Another major move from the administration.
Yes, announcing plans to revoke temporary protected status TPS.
For immigrants from Honduras and Nicaragua. Over 70,000 people.
That's the number cited. People who've been living and working legally here for years, often after natural disasters back home. Revoking TPS puts them at risk of deportation.
What's the administration's reasoning?
They argue conditions in those countries have improved enough.
But advocates disagree.
Strongly. Immigrant advocates, legal experts, they argue that violence, poverty, instability are still rampant, making return genuinely dangerous.
So protests, legal challenges expected.
Absolutely. Warnings about family separations again, humanitarian crises.
While supporters of the move argue TPS was never meant to be permanent.
Right. They frame it as restoring integrity to immigration law. It's a fundamental clash over what TPS is for and when it should end.
And sadly, on the same day, there were also some terrible violent incidents.
Yeah, a mass shooting in Philadelphia, Gray's Ferry neighborhood.
3 dead, 9 injured.
That's right, early morning. The identified shooter was apparently a local resident with a history of mental health issues. Motive still under investigation, could be gang-related, personal dispute, they don't know yet.
Reignites all those debates, doesn't it? Yeah. Gun control, mental health services, policing.
Immediately. And then also on July 7th, a shooting at a U.S. Border Patrol building in Texas.
An attack on Border Patrol.
Yes. Shooter opened fire, injured 2 officers and an employee before being killed.
Motive.
Under investigation, looking into potential links to broader threats. But again, it throws fuel on the fire of debates about border security, gun violence, safety for law enforcement.
It's just a lot. All these domestic events show how policy choices hit people directly in their communities.
And how fast the political ground can shift under your feet, with really profound consequences.
All right, finally, let's look at innovation and also the justice system. Frontiers of ingenuity and quests for accountability.
Starting with AI, a pretty big breakthrough announced.
Yeah, what was it?
Scientists unveiled a new AI model. Apparently, it can mimic human decision-making, even in complex moral and social dilemmas.
Whoa, how does it work?
It integrates cognitive science with deep learning, simulates how we weigh trade-offs in high-stakes situations.
That sounds actually huge. What are the applications?
Researchers are talking about enhancing human-AI collaboration. Think healthcare, law, public policy, getting insights into human reasoning itself.
But there must be concerns, too.
Oh, for sure. Reactions are mixed. Excitement, yes, but also a lot of caution about algorithmic bias. The need for serious oversight. Who gets to define the morals it learns?
Big ethical questions there.
Massive. And related to AI, there was also news about education.
Right, the K-12 AI Education Pledge.
Yeah, 68 organizations endorsed President Trump's pledge to introduce AI education in schools.
The goal being national AI literacy, preparing kids for the future.
That's the idea. Supporters see it as essential for U.S. tech leadership innovation.
Critics.
Some worry that political framing might hinder bipartisan support. And practical concerns about curriculum, how it's actually implemented in classrooms.
It does raise that important question, though. If AI can predict decisions, how do we manage that? Balance innovation and oversight. Prepare the next generation.
It's a frontier moving incredibly fast.
Okay, shifting to the justice system. Still under scrutiny, the Epstein case came up again.
Yeah, the DOJ and FBI released a memo, said a systematic review found no incriminating Epstein client list.
No list. And they reaffirmed his death was by suicide.
Correct. The memo seemed intended to address all the public doubts, the misinformation swirling around. The White House backed the findings.
How was that received?
Mixed. Some accept the official account, others still question the transparency. You know, the case just remains this touchstone for debates about accountability, wealth, power.
Lingering questions keep it alive.
Exactly. Highlights that struggle for public trust.
Then, up in Canada, news about Robert Pickton, the serial killer.
He was fatally assaulted in prison, apparently involved a broken-off broom handle.
Grim details. Raises questions about prison security.
Definitely. An investigation's underway, looking into security, treatment of high-profile inmates. Public reaction there was divided, too. Relief from some, concern from others about justice, oversight.
Man, more tragedy.
Yeah.
That fireworks factory explosion in California.
Yeah, massive explosion. 7 people killed, several injured, destroyed a lot of the facility.
Yeah, it caused it.
Investigations focusing on improper storage or handling of the explosives. Predictably, it's reignited debates about workplace safety regulations, oversight of hazardous industries.
And finally, a really unusual case from Australia.
Aaron Patterson, found guilty of murdering 3 relatives by serving them poisonous mushrooms. Death caps, I think. The case involved complex family tensions, relied a lot on circumstantial evidence.
Wow. Sparked discussions about food safety, obviously, but also proving intent in poisoning cases.
Yeah, unique challenges there.
So these stories, from AI ethics to the justice system's complexities, they really challenge us, don't they? About truth, accountability, in this age of overload.
Absolutely. How do we find truth? How do we ensure accountability?
What a deep dive that was. We've covered a lot from just one day, July 7th, 2025. You've just gotten insights that honestly would take hours, maybe days, to piece together yourself.
Hopefully in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, seeing the threads, right? Natural disasters to political shifts, economic pressures to social challenges, tech leaps to ethical problems.
It really does raise an important question for all of us, I think. In a world with so much happening constantly, how do you filter it? How do you focus on what actually matters?
And what does this sheer pace of change demand from us, from our critical thinking?
Yeah, that's the takeaway, maybe.
Well, that's our deep dive for today. Keep digging, keep asking questions.
And keep diving deep into the knowledge that matters to you.
We'll be here to help guide you through the next stack of sources.